There is a loss almost no one warns you about, and it doesn't arrive all at once. It moves slowly, quietly, while you go on with your life. One day it's harder to get up from a chair. Another day the grocery bag feels heavier than you remember. It's not ordinary tiredness. It's your muscles slowly shutting down. And when muscle goes, it doesn't just take strength with it. It takes independence, confidence, self-respect. Have you ever asked yourself when that decline began? Or do you keep telling yourself it's just age? My name is Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. I am an older man, a father, a widower. I have seen up close what happens when the body starts to fail and the mind is not ready. For years I thought willpower was enough. It wasn't. Today I'm going to show you a series of specific, simple, real foods that can help slow this silent deterioration. Not to make you look better, to help you hold on to your daily life with dignity. But before we go on, let me tell you something uncomfortable. Eating well is useless if your attitude is still that of someone who has already given up. Stay until the end. The last point isn't about food. It's about the inner stance you need to go through this process without breaking on the inside. Without that mindset, no food is enough. And that, believe me, I learned too late. 1. Whole eggs. There are foods with no epic quality, and precisely because of that, they work. The egg is one of them. It promises nothing extraordinary, it isn't wrapped in modern talk, and yet it supports something basic that starts to fail in old age more than people admit: consistency. You don't lose muscle because you lack character. You lose it because day after day, your body stops receiving what it needs to stay upright. Muscle doesn't disappear because of a dramatic event, it fades through neglect. I think about this many mornings when I make something simple before going out for a walk. There isn't always hunger. Sometimes the body feels slow, the stomach closed off, the mind somewhere else. And that's where many people fail. They wait until they feel like it. But the body doesn't run on desire, it runs on supply. Eggs go down easily, they're easy to measure, they don't demand much chewing or preparation. It's a concrete way of telling the body, I still take care of you. There's a scene that repeats itself in many homes. An older man sitting at the table, black coffee, dry bread, and the idea that it's enough because it always was. But it isn't anymore. With the years, the protein threshold needed to maintain muscle goes up, not down. And if you don't reach that minimum in a meal, the body simply doesn't repair. Have you stopped to think whether what you eat today actually gives your body a reason to hold itself together? The egg offers something other foods don't provide as clearly. It's complete protein. That means it brings what muscle needs without you having to combine, calculate, or improvise. 2 well-prepared eggs can make the difference between a body that holds on and one that gives a little more each week. It's not magic, it's basic biology applied with respect. In practical terms, there's no need to complicate things. Scrambled, boiled, your way. A bit of olive oil, just enough salt. If you have vegetables, even better. If not, it still works. And when there's not even the desire to chew, there's an option few consider, but many appreciate. Pasteurized egg whites mixed with warm broth and spices. It goes down like a drink, nourishes like a meal. It's not elegant, it's effective. I remember a friend, already older, who started weakening quickly after a minor fall. It wasn't the fall that broke him down. It was poor recovery, the lack of sustained protein. When he corrected that, he didn't become young again, but he went back to standing up on his own. And that changes everything. There's a phrase that stayed with me from that experience. Muscle doesn't ask for motivation, it asks for raw material. But even understanding this, something deeper begins to surface when you take responsibility for your body. An uncomfortable question that isn't solved in the kitchen and that will stay with us as we move forward. How far are you willing to support yourself when no one is applauding you for it? 2. Plain Greek yogurt. There is a silent trap in old age that almost no one names. It's not the lack of food, it's the lack of appetite. The body no longer asks the way it used to, and the mind reads that as a sign that there's no need to insist. That's where the wear begins. Greek yogurt shows up at that exact point, when eating becomes a task rather than a desire. It takes no effort, it doesn't sit heavy in the stomach, and yet it concentrates an amount of protein that can support an entire day better than many people imagine. I sometimes catch myself thinking about how many older people I know who eat little not by choice, but by exhaustion. Exhaustion from cooking, from chewing, from deciding. Greek yogurt is almost a refusal of drama. You open the container, you eat, and the body receives something real. There's no hidden sugar if you choose well, no gimmicks. It's direct, the way the relationship with the body should be at this age. In geriatric nutrition, one simple idea comes up again and again. When volume goes down, density matters more than ever. You can't eat the way you used to, so every spoonful has to count. Greek yogurt does exactly that. A few spoonfuls, solid protein, good digestive tolerance for many people. Not for everyone, of course. The body always has its own temperament, but for many, it's a firm base when everything else becomes irregular. I picture an everyday moment, mid-afternoon. Energy drops. Before, you might have solved it with coffee and something sweet. Today that leaves you shaky or empty a short while later. A small bowl of plain Greek yogurt instead, with a bit of cinnamon and chopped walnuts, changes the entire afternoon. It doesn't stimulate you, it stabilizes you. And that stability is what allows you to walk, to train gently, to get through the evening without collapsing. There's also the option of drinking it, something many appreciate when the stomach feels closed off. A bit of yogurt blended with water or milk, a mild fruit, low in acidity. It's not a modern smoothie or a trend. It's a way of continuing to nourish yourself when solid food is difficult. Have you allowed yourself to adapt the way you eat to what your body needs now, or are you still demanding that it function the way it did before? I met an older woman, widowed as well, who started losing weight in a worrying way. It wasn't only sadness, it was disorder. Adding Greek yogurt daily didn't bring back her youth, but it brought back regularity. And regularity at this age is a form of self-respect. There's a sentence that sums this up without decoration. When appetite fails, strategy matters more than willpower. And even so, even with good strategy, the body needs more than isolated protein. It needs allies that support not just muscle, but recovery as a whole. That's where we move into another territory. 3. Canned sardines. There are foods that carry an unfair prejudice. Sardines are one of them. They're associated with scarcity, with hard times, with rushed meals. And yet, few things explain better what it means to eat intelligently in old age. Quality protein, fat that reduces inflammation, real calcium if you eat the bones. Here we're not talking only about muscle. We're talking about the entire system that supports that muscle when the body no longer forgives mistakes. I often think sarcopenia is misunderstood because it's reduced to strength alone. But strength without recovery is useless. And recovery, at this age, depends greatly on the silent inflammation you carry without noticing. Sardines provide omega-3s, something you don't feel in the moment, but that over time changes how the body responds to effort and wear. They don't make you stronger overnight. They make you less fragile over the months. I've seen the same scene repeat itself. An older man who walks every day, who does what he can, but complains of constant aches, stiffness, a fatigue that never goes away. Activity isn't always the problem. Sometimes it's the absence of nutrients that help the body repair. Sardines, humble and consistent, fill that role without asking anything of you. They don't demand cooking, they don't demand time, they don't demand perfect teeth. In daily life, they work almost without thinking. An open can over toasted bread or on a simple salad, Lemon, pepper, a bit of olive oil, and if the body wants something warm, they can be lightly sautéed with garlic and parsley. No more than that. When something is good, it doesn't need a disguise. Have you ever asked yourself how many times you dismissed a valuable food just because of the idea you had about it? I remember my father in his final years rejecting certain foods out of pride, as if accepting something simple meant accepting decline. Over time, I understood it wasn't decline, it was adaptation. And adapting is not giving up, it's choosing to remain. There's a line that has stayed with me ever since. What is humble doesn't take away your dignity, it gives it back when the body begins to falter. Sardines also speak of foresight, of having something reliable at home that doesn't depend on mood or energy that day. And when you begin to organize your eating this way, another deeper question appears, not about what you eat, but about how you sustain day to day without improvising. Because muscle isn't maintained by isolated gestures, it's maintained by a foundation. And that foundation, many times, isn't animal. It's something slower, more structural, more silent. That's where we move into another territory worth looking at calmly. 4. Lentils. There's an idea that's hard to accept as you grow older. Not everything is fixed with meat. For many years, I also believed that strength came only from the animal side, from what's direct, from what's associated with power. Over time, I understood that an aging body doesn't just need muscle, it needs order, and that order often begins in the gut, in steady energy, in the regular rhythm of days. Lentils fit there, quietly, supporting what isn't immediately visible. Sarcopenia doesn't show up alone. It's often accompanied by persistent fatigue, blood sugar swings, slow digestion, that feeling that the body never quite gets going. When that happens, insisting only on animal protein may not be enough. Lentils provide plant protein, yes, but also fiber and minerals that help the entire system function better. They don't lift you up suddenly. They hold you steady. I think of a very common scene. Midday. The plate is poor, repetitive, without structure. Food is eaten quickly and poorly. By afternoon, the crash arrives. Legs feel heavy. The mind shuts down. Well-prepared lentils change that sequence. They fill you without heaviness. They provide a base that lasts for hours. It's not a meal to impress anyone. It's a meal to keep going when there's no room left for improvisation. At home, I always prepare them simply. A sober stew, nothing excessive. And when I want to improve their profile, I combine them with rice or with an egg. Not out of whim, but to complete amino acids and give the body a clearer signal for repair. There's also another form many appreciate when chewing becomes difficult. Lentils blended with broth and spices, a thick soup that goes down easily and truly nourishes. Not everything nutritious has to be solid. I once knew an older man who despised legumes. He said they were food from another time. He lived tired, irritable, always on edge. When he began to include them, he didn't become stronger overnight, but he became more stable. And stability, at this age, is a quiet form of power. Have you asked yourself whether your fatigue comes only from the years or from a poorly built foundation? There's a line that sums this up well, and I don't say it lightly. A body without a base collapses, even if it has muscle. Lentils aren't the star, but without them, the system limps. And when you begin to understand that, the need for something even more concrete appears, something more repeatable, easier to sustain day after day without much thought. Something that works as the backbone of the plate. That's what we'll talk about next. 5. Chicken breast. There comes a point in life when you stop chasing variety and start looking for reliability. Not because you've become boring, but because you've understood that the body no longer tolerates disorder. Chicken breast enters at that moment as a tool, not a pleasure. It's predictable, easy to calculate, repeatable. And when it comes to slowing muscle loss, repeating what's right matters more than improvising enthusiastically for a couple of days. I think about my own routine. I don't feel like cooking every day. I don't have the energy to decide every day. And yet, eating well is still my responsibility. Chicken allows me to fulfill that responsibility without drama. Grilled, baked, no complications. I know what it provides. I know how my body handles it. I know it does its job. In old age, that certainty is more comforting than any elaborate recipe. There's a very common scene I see often. An older man opens the fridge, stares at it as if it were a problem, and ends up settling for anything. Bread, something sweet, nothing. Chicken prevents that drift. It's the backbone of the plate, something around which everything else is organized. Vegetables, rice, whatever is available, but there is a center that holds. From the body's point of view, chicken breast provides lean protein that's easy for muscle to use without dragging along excesses that later become hard to digest. It doesn't inflame, it doesn't weigh you down, it doesn't distract the system. And when chewing starts to become an obstacle, there's a solution as well. Shredded in broth with vegetables, it becomes a soft meal that still nourishes. It's not resignation, it's intelligent adaptation. I remember an acquaintance who resisted these solutions because they felt like a step backward to him, as if changing texture meant accepting defeat. What he didn't see was that the real setback was stopping good nutrition out of pride. There's a line that became clear to me over the years. The body doesn't understand pride, it understands care. Everything else is noise. Preparing it doesn't require science. Garlic, lemon, herbs, little more than that. And repeating it without guilt, without exaggerated boredom. Because here we're not chasing culinary pleasure, we're defending autonomy. Have you stopped to think how many daily decisions could be simplified so your energy reaches what truly matters? When you start organizing your meals this way, another silent problem appears. Long hours without eating, especially at night, when the body enters a fast that no longer serves it well. That's where another piece, slower and more strategic, begins to make sense. And it's worth looking at closely. 6. Cottage cheese or ricotta. There's a time of day that almost no one takes care of, and yet it weighs more than it seems. The night. That long stretch when the body goes without food while you sleep and starts drawing from whatever is available. And at a certain age, what's available is muscle. Not because the body is cruel, but because it follows biological logic. When there's no input, it consumes what's on hand. There's no drama here, only consequence. I often think about how many older people end their days. A light dinner, sometimes no dinner at all, and the idea that eating less is better. But the aging body doesn't read that as prudence. It reads it as scarcity, and it responds accordingly. Ricotta or cottage cheese enter this space as a quiet strategy, not to fill you up, but to sustain you. Their protein, casein, digests slowly. It accompanies the body for hours without demanding anything from it. It's not a flashy or celebratory food, it's discreet, as care at this age should be. A simple plate, no sugar, no unnecessary adornments, a bit of olive oil, tomato if you feel like it, something eaten without rush, almost as a closing gesture to the day. And yet, that gesture changes the entire night. The body rests differently when it doesn't feel abandoned. I've seen more than one person complain about morning weakness without understanding where it comes from. They wake up tired, unsure, with that sense of having slipped back a little more. Many times it's not age. It's a poorly managed, prolonged fast. Adding a slow-digesting protein before sleep doesn't make you younger, but it slows the invisible bleed. Have you ever asked yourself what happens in your body while you sleep, or do you assume everything simply stops? There's also a liquid option, which for some feels gentler. Ricotta blended with milk and unsweetened cocoa. Thick, simple, almost a ritual. This isn't about taste, it's about strategy. There's no magic here, only understanding the process. The aging body needs anticipation, not late reaction. I remember a man who told me it was no longer worth taking care of himself at night, that at his age it didn't matter. He said it calmly, but it wasn't acceptance. It was resignation. There's a line I want to leave here without dressing it up too much. While you sleep, the body decides whether to preserve you or consume you. And that decision depends on small, sustained gestures that almost no one sees. When you start caring for the night as well, something falls into place. The next day feels less uphill. And then another factor appears, one that many underestimate because it doesn't shine like protein, but without which none of this holds. Fuel. The energy that allows everything above to make sense. That's what we'll talk about now. 7. Oats. Oats almost always get a bad reputation in these conversations. They're not seen as strong. They don't impress. They're not associated with muscle or endurance. And yet, when you look at the whole picture, you understand that without stable energy, no protein is truly used. The body may have raw material, but without fuel, it switches into conservation mode. And when the body conserves, muscle is the first thing to be sacrificed. I think of many breakfasts I see every day. Black coffee, maybe a piece of toast, sometimes nothing at all. And then, the surprise when mid-morning brings trembling, weakness, a lack of desire to move. It's not a lack of character, it's a lack of foundation. Oats, used properly, prevent that void. They don't spike blood sugar, they don't create false energy highs. They sustain. And at this age, sustaining matters more than starting strong. There's a very clear scene. An older man who wants to walk, who knows movement does him good, but doesn't have the strength to do it regularly. It's not that he doesn't want to, it's that he reaches movement already empty. Simple, cooked oats create a platform. They don't push you, they walk with you, and from there, the body responds better to effort, however small. They're not the queen of protein, and they don't pretend to be. Their value is in the system they build around themselves. Combined with Greek yogurt or milk, oats become a complete, stable, predictable breakfast, something the body learns to recognize. And when the body recognizes, it cooperates. Have you ever wondered whether your weakness comes from what you do or from how little you support yourself before doing it? There's also the liquid option, which for many is decisive. Cold oats blended with yogurt and a mild fruit. Easy to take in, not heavy, not demanding. For those who don't tolerate eating early, this form can make the difference between starting the day or dragging through it. It's not a modern trick. It's a reasonable adaptation to a body that no longer responds the way it once did. I remember a period when I myself underestimated energy. I focused so much on protein that I forgot the rest. I walked, trained gently, but ended up exhausted and irritable. When I put fuel in order, everything else began to work better. There's a line that sums up that experience without exaggeration. Without stable energy, muscle cannot defend itself. And when you start seeing the body as a system rather than a collection of foods, a deeper question emerges. From what place are you facing this process? Because you can eat well, plan, do everything right, and still sabotage yourself in your own mind. What comes next isn't something you eat, but it decides whether everything above works or not. 8. A stoic mindset in the face of sarcopenia. Everything above can be perfectly organized and still fail. Good food, consistency, even some movement, and yet the body keeps declining. When that happens, there is almost always a problem that isn't on the plate. It's in the attitude you bring to deterioration. Sarcopenia is not just a biological process, it is a test of character. And that's uncomfortable to say because it forces you to look at yourself without excuses. For a long time, I believed that accepting the passage of time was a refined form of surrender. I told myself it was normal to lose strength, that it wasn't worth resisting. It sounded reasonable, but it wasn't Stoicism. It was abandonment disguised as wisdom. Stoicism doesn't deny the reality of a changing body. It looks straight at it and asks a different question. What depends on me now, and what doesn't? When asked honestly, that question puts everything in order. Marcus Aurelius wrote to remind himself that the body wears down, yes, but that the response to that wear is a daily choice. You don't control biology, but you do control the discipline with which you face it. And that discipline isn't epic, it's boring. It's getting up anyway, eating even when you don't feel like it, moving even if it's just a little, with no one watching. From what place are you living this process? From complaint or from quiet responsibility? There's a scene that repeats itself in many older people: the resigned comment, the joke about age, the preemptive self-mockery before someone else can make it. It seems harmless, but it erodes something deeper: self-respect. When you start treating your decline as an inevitable joke, the body understands it as an order to retreat. The mind gives up before the muscles do. Viktor Frankl, under conditions infinitely harsher than ours, made something clear. Even in extreme fragility, the human being retains the freedom to choose their attitude. You don't choose to age, you don't choose to lose muscle mass, but you do choose whether that turns you into a passive victim or into someone who resists without dramatizing. To resist is not to deny pain. It is to refuse to let pain decide for you. I've seen people with fewer physical resources live with more dignity simply because they didn't surrender mentally. They didn't talk about what they could no longer do. They talked about what they were still holding together. And they acted accordingly. They ate as they should. They moved within their limits. They didn't negotiate with laziness disguised as prudence. There's a line that works here like a blunt blow. The body falls faster when the mind gives up first. This mindset is not empty optimism, it's sobriety. It's accepting that the body won't go back, but that it also doesn't have to collapse without resistance. It's understanding that your value isn't in the strength you've lost, but in the responsibility you maintain. And that responsibility shows itself in concrete gestures, repeated, almost invisible. If there's one thing I want to be clear in this point, it's this: sarcopenia does not define who you are, but it reveals how you face what you didn't choose. You can use it as an excuse to let go, or as a reason to become more ordered than ever. And that uncomfortable, silent decision is what determines whether everything above works or dissolves. This is not where the problem ends. This is where your stance toward it begins. If you made it this far, you can already see it clearly. We didn't talk about miracle recipes or turning back the clock. We talked about eggs, yogurt, sardines, lentils, chicken, ricotta, oats, simple things, repeatable things, foods that aren't meant to impress but to sustain. Each one serves a concrete purpose in slowing a loss that, if ignored, takes your autonomy without asking permission. Not to look better, to get up on your own, to walk without fear, to remain the owner of your day. But the most important part wasn't in the kitchen. It was in the mind. In understanding that the body changes, yes, but dignity is only lost if you give it away. That accepting is not the same as giving up. That taking care of yourself today is not nostalgia for who you were, but respect for who you still are, and that no one is coming to do this work for you. My name is Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. This channel exists to accompany you through this stage of life with truth, structure, and firmness. If this video helped bring even a little order to your thinking, I invite you to subscribe, to share it with someone who might need it, and to leave a comment with the phrase, "I am Stoic," along with the country you're listening from. I read every message. Truly, I like knowing from which part of the world this community of adults who refuse to give up is taking shape. 2 videos will appear on screen next. Choose one and keep going deeper. We don't promise to feel better here. We learn how to be stronger, See you.